Hello and welcome to our 13th episode of Tuesday Tales of Terror. It is I, Collie Mortwood. We are not 100% tonight, and I actually skipped Tango because I am not feeling so great. But we are not skipping our Tuesday Tales of Terror, so you are welcome. And let's just jump right in. We're in episode 13, and we're picking up with chapter 13 of Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree. And this is part 4 of 5 of 6 parts. I already stated I'm not 100%, so y'all are just gonna have to bear with me. So my little ghouls, guys and ghouls, drink some water, get a cup of tea, settle in, get cozy, and let's begin. Now, where we left off, the young boys are with Samhain, and Samhain is turning souls into animals, all manner of animals, mostly like lizards and scorpions and things. And they saw Pipkin. Pipkin looks like a dog in this time, and he's saying, meet me, right? Somewhat caught up, let us begin. Chapter 13. Samhain, scythe uplifted, gazed all about, happy at his games. He chuckled a most delicious chuckle, spat fiery spittle on his horny hands, clenched the scythe tighter, swung it up, and froze. For somewhere, someone was singing. Somewhere near the top of a hill, in a small clump of trees, a small bonfire flickered. Men like shadows were gathered there, lifting up their arms and chanting. Samhain listened, his scythe like a great smile in his arms. O Samhain, god of the dead, hear us. We the holy druid priests, in this grove of trees, the great oaks, plead for the souls of the dead. Not my strong suit, but here we are. Far away, these strange men by their bright fire lifted metal knives, lifted cats and goats in their hands, chanting. We pray for the souls of those who are turned to beasts. O God of the dead, we sacrifice these beasts, so that you will free the souls of our loved ones who died this year. Shing! The knives flashed. Samhain smiled an even greater smile. The animals shrieked. All around the boys, on the earth, the grass, the rocks, the trapped souls, lost in spiders, lost in roaches, put away in fleas and pillbugs and centipedes, gaped and yammered silent yammers, and twitched and roiled. Tom winced. He thought he heard a million small, very microscopic bleats of pain and release from around him where the centipedes capered, spiders danced. Let free, let be, prayed the druids on the hill. The fires blazed. A sea wind roared over the meadows, brushed the rocks, touched at the spiders, rolled the pillbugs, tumbled the roaches. The tiny spiders, insects, the miniature dogs and cows fluffed away like a million snowflakes. The tiny souls trapped in insect bodies dissolved. Released with a vast cavern whisper, they whistled up the sky. To heaven on, cried the Druid priests. Oh, free, go! They flew. They vanished in the air with a great sigh of thanks and much gratitude. Samhain, god of the dead, shrugged and let them go. Then just as suddenly he stiffened, as did the hidden boys and Mr. Moundshroud crouched in the rocks. Through a valley and across the hill ran an army of Roman soldiers, a troop on the double. Their leader ran before them, shouting, "Soldiers of Rome, destroy the pagans! Destroy the unholy religion! Suetonius so orders! For Suetonius!" Samhain in the sky raised his scythe too late. The soldiers slammed swords and axes into the bases of the holy Druid oaks. Samhain shrieked in pain as if the axes had chopped his knees. The holy trees groaned, whistled, and with a final chop, thundered to earth. Samhain trembled in the high air. The Druid priests, fleeing, stopped and shuddered. Trees fell. The priests tripped at the ankles. The knees fell. They were blown over like oaks in a hurricane. "No!" roared Samhain in the high air. "But yes!" cried the Romans. "Now!" The soldiers gave a final mighty blow, and Samhain, god of the dead, torn at his roots, chopped at his ankles, began to fall. The boys, staring up, leaped out of the way, for it was like a giant forest falling all in one fall. They were shadowed by his midnight descent. The thunder of his death came before him. He was the greatest tree in all existence ever, the tallest oak ever to plummet down and die. Down he came through the wild air, screaming, flailing to hold himself up. Samhain hit the earth. He dropped with a roar that shook the bones of the hills and snuffed the holy fires. And with Samhain cut down and dead, the last of the Druid oaks fell with him, like wheat cut with a final scythe. His own huge scythe, a vast smile, lost in the fields, dissolved into a puddle of silver and sank into the grass. Silence, a smoldering of fires, a blowing of leaves. Instantly the sun went down. The Druid priests bled in the grass as the boys watched, and the Roman captain prowled the dead fires, kicking the holy ashes. "Here we shall build our temples to our gods." The soldiers lit new fires and burned incense before golden idols which they set in place. But no sooner lit than a star shone in the east. On far desert sands, to camel bells, 3 wise men moved. The Roman soldiers lifted their bronze shields against the glare of the star in the sky, but their shields melted. The Roman idols melted and became shapes of Mary and her son. The soldiers' armor melted, dripped, changed. They were dressed now in the garments of priests who sang Latin before yet newer altars, even as Moundshroud, crouched, squinting, weighed the scene and whispered it to his small masked friends. "Aye, boys, see, gods following gods. The Romans cut down the Druids, their oaks, their god of the dead, bang, down, and put in their own gods, eh? Now the Christians run and cut the Romans down. New altars, boys, new incense, new names." The wind blew the altar candles out. In darkness, Tom cried out. The earth shuddered and spun. Rain drenched in them. "What's happening, Mr. Moundshroud? Where are we?" Moundshroud struck a flinty thumb into fire and held it up. "Why, bless me, boys, it's the Dark Ages. The longest dark night ever. Christ long since come and gone in the world, and—" "Where's Pipkin?" "Here!" cried a voice from the black sky. "I think I want a broom. It's taking me away." Hey, me too, said Ralph, and then JJ, and then Hackles Nibbly, and Wally Bab, and all the rest. There was a huge whisper like a gigantic cat stroking its whiskers in the dark. Brooms, muttered Moundshroud. The gathering of the brooms. The October Broom Festival. The annual migration. To where? Asked Tom, calling up, for everyone was making traffic on the air now and whisking shrieks. The broom works, of course. Help! I'm flying, said Henry Hank. Whisk! A broom whistled him away. A great brambly cat flashed by Tom's cheek. He felt a wooden pole between his legs jump up. Hang on, said Moundshroud. When attacked by a broom, only one thing to do. Hold tight. I'm holding, cried Tom, and flew away. Chapter 14. The sky was swept clean with brooms. The sky was yelled clean by boys occupying at least 8 of those brooms at once. And what with changing their cries of fear to cries of delight, the boys almost forgot to look or listen for Pipkin, similarly sailed off among island clouds. This way! As quick as we can, said Tom Skelton. But, Pip, it's awful hard to ride a broomstick, I find. Funny you say that, said Henry Hank. I agree. Everyone agreed, falling off, hanging on, climbing back. There was now such a hustle of brooms as left no room for clouds, and none for mists, and certainly none for fog or boys. There was an immense traffic jam of brooms, as if all of Earth's forests gave up their branches in one boom and fling and scouring autumn fields, cut clean and throttled tight such cereal grains as made good sweepers, thrashers, beaters, then flew up. So here came all the backyard wash-line prop poles in the world, and here came with them swatches of grass, clumps of weed, brambles of bush to herd the sheep clouds and cleanse the stars and ride the boys. And here we have a picture of the boys riding their brooms. Said boys, each one on his own skinny mount, were deluged with beatings and cuffings of flail and wood. Deluged. They were punished severely for occupying heaven. They took 100 bruises each, a dozen cuts, and precisely 49 lumps on their tender skulls. Hey! I got a bloody nose! Gasped Tom, happily looking at the red on his fingers. Shucks! Cried Pipkin, going into a cloud dry and coming out wet. That's nothing. I got one eye shut, one ear bad, and lost a tooth. Pipkin, called Tom, don't keep telling us to meet you, and then we don't know where. Where? In the air, said Pipkin. Geez, muttered Henry Hank. There's 2,100,000,099,000,000 acres of air wrapped around the world. Which half acre does Pip mean? I mean, gasped Pipkin. But a whole bundle of broomsticks banged up in an akimbo dance like a shuttle of cornstalks across his flight, or a farmland fence suddenly come antic and in frenzies. A cloud with a grand fiend face gaped its mouth. It swallowed Pipkin, broom and all, then shut its vapors tight and rumbled with Pipkin indigestion. Kick your way out, Pipkin! Stomp him in the stomach, someone suggested. But nothing kicked, and the clouds, satisfied, sailed on Forever's Bay toward eternity's dawn, ruminating over its delicious sweet boy dinner. Meet him in the air, Tom snorted. Good grief! Talk about horrible directions to nowhere. See even more horrible directions, said Moundshroud, sailing on a broom that looked like a wet and angry cat on the end of a mop. "Would you see witches, boys? Hags, crones, conjure wives, magicians, black magics, demons, devils? There they be in mobs and riots, boys, skin your eyeballs." And there below, all across Europe, through France and Germany and Spain, on the night roads were indeed clusters and mobs and parades of strange sinners running north, scrambling away from the southern sea. That's it. Jump, run, this way to the night, this way to the dark. Moundshroud swooped low, shouting over the mobs like a general leading a fine, evil troop. Quick, hide, lie low, wait a few centuries. Hide out from what? Wondered Tom. Here come the Christians, yelled voices below on the roads. And that was the answer. Tom blinked and soared and watched, and from all the roads the mobs ran to stand alone on farms or at crossroads, in harvest fields, in towns, old men, old women, toothless and raving, yelling to the sky as the brooms swept down. "Why," said Henry Hank, stunned, "those are witches." "Dry clean my soul and hang it out to dry if you're not right, boy," agreed Moundshroud. "They're witches jumping fires," said J.J. "And witches stirring cauldrons," said Tom. "And witches drawing symbols in farmyard dust," said Ralph. "Are they real? I mean, I always thought—" "Real?" Moundshroud, insulted, almost fell from his bramble-cat broom. "Ye little gods and fishes, lad, every town has its resident witch. Every town hides some old Greek pagan priest, some Roman worshipper of tiny gods who ran up the roads, hid in culverts, sank in caves to escape the Christians. In every tiny village, boy, and every scrubby farm, the old religions hide out. You saw the Druids cut and chopped. They hid from the Romans, and now the Romans who fed Christians to lions run themselves to hide. So all the little lollygagging cults, all flavors and types, scramble to survive. See how they run, boys." And it was true. Fires burned all over Europe. At every crossroad and by every haystack, dark forms jumped in cats across flames. Cauldrons bubbled. Old hags cursed. Dogs frolicked. Red-hot coals. "Witches! Witches everywhere," said Tom, amazed. "I never knew there were so many." "Mobs and multitudes, Tom. Europe was flooded to the dikes. Witches underfoot, under bed, in the cellars and high attics." "Boy, oh boy," said Henry Hank, proud in his witch costume. "Real witches! Could they talk to the dead?" "No," said Moundshroud. "Jump-up devils?" "No." "Keep demons and door hinges and squeal them out at midnight?" "No." "Ride broomsticks?" "No." "Put sneezing spells on people?" "Sorry." "Kill folks by sticking pins in dolls?" "No." "Well, heck, what could they do?" "Nothing." "Nothing?" cried all the boys affronted. Oh, they thought they could, boys. Moundshroud led the team down on the brooms over the farms, where witches dropped frogs in cauldrons and stomped toads and snuffed mummy dust and cavorted in cackles. But stop and think. What does the word witch truly mean? "Why," said Tom, and was stymied. "Wits," said Moundshroud. "Intelligence, That's all it means. Knowledge, so any man or woman with half a brain and with inclinations toward learning had his wits about him, eh? And so anyone too smart who didn't watch out was called a witch, said everyone. And some of the smart ones, the ones with wits, pretended at magic or deemed themselves with ghosts and dead shufflers and ambling mummies. And if enemies dropped dead by coincidence, they took credit for it. They liked to believe they had power, but they had none, boys, none. Sad and sorry 'tis true, but listen. There beyond the hill, that's where the brooms come from. That's where they go. You know, I'm gonna be real with you. These songs would be a lot easier to sing if they rhymed, Mr. Bradbury. The boys listened and heard. It's so much harder to sing a song that isn't rhyming. We're gonna do our best. The broom works makes the broom that looms on sky and gloom and rising of the moon. It kind of rhymes. The broom which grew to which flies high on harvestings of storm wind grass, with shriek and sigh to motion it in ocean seas of clouds, now soft, now loud. I hate it. I hate reading songs in books. I hate it. Below, at full tilt, a witch broom factory was filled with commotions, poles being cut and bound with broom brushes, which, no sooner tied, took off up chimneys in flights of spark. On rooftops, hags leaped on to ride the stars, or so it seemed, as the boys watched and voices sang. Did witches feel the night wind in their bed, and reel and dance with devils in the dead? No, but that is what they bragged and claimed and said, until whole continents, hell-bent, named witches of the innocent, and did conspire to burn old women, babes, and virgins in a fire. Mobs raved through villages and farms with torches cursing. Bonfires flared from the English Channel to the Mediterranean shore. Through all of Germany and France, 10,000 so-called evil witches hung to kick their final antic dance. No village but what shared a dread uproar, as each side named the other for a devil's pig, old Satan's sow, the demon's maddened boar. Wild pigs with witches glued to their backs trotted roof tiles, flinting sparks, snorting steams. All Europe was a cloud of witches' smoke, their judges often bound and burnt with them, for what a joke! Until all men are spoiled with guilt, all sin, all lie. So what to do? Why, everyone must die. Smoke churned the sky. At every crossroads witches hung. Crows gathered in a feathered darkness. The boys hung from their brooms in the sky. Eyes popped, mouths wide. Anyone want to be a witch? Asked Moundshroud at last. Ugh, said Henry Hank, shivering in his witch's rags. Not me. No fun, eh, boy? No fun. The brooms flew them off through chars and smokes. They landed on an empty street, in an open place, in Paris. Their brooms fell over, dead. Yes. Chapter 15. Well now, boys, what should we do to scare the scarers, frighten the frighteners, shiver the shiverers? Called Moundshroud inside a cloud. What's bigger than demons and witches? Bigger gods? Bigger witches? Bigger churches? Guessed Tom Skelton. Bless you, Tom, right. An idea gets big, yes. A religion gets big. How? With buildings large enough to cast shadows across an entire land. Build buildings you can see for 100 miles. Build one so tall and famous it has a hunchback in it. Ringing bells. So now, boys, help me build it brick by brick, flying buttress by flying buttress. Let's build Notre Dame, shouted 8 boys. And all the more reason to build Notre Dame because, said Mountroud. Listen. Bong! A bell tolled in the sky. Bong! Help! Whispered a voice when the sound had died. Bong! The boys looked and saw a kind of scaffolding reared up in a belfry keep upon the moon. At the very top hung a huge bronze bell that was tolling now, and from inside the bell with every crash and bang and gong a small voice shouted, Help! The boys looked at Mountroud. Their eyes blazed a question. Pipkin? Meet me in the air, thought Tom, and there he is. There, hung upside down over Paris, his head for a knocker, was Pipkin in a bell, or the shadow, ghost, or lost spirit of Pipkin, anyway. Which is to say there was a bell, and when it sounded the hour, why, that sound was made by a flesh-and-blood clapper which knocked the rim. Pipkin's head banged the bell, bong, and again, bong. Knock his brains out, gasped Henry Hank. Help! Called Pipkin, a shadow in the bell, a ghost chained upside down to strike the quarters and the hours. Fly! Cried the boys to their brooms, but their brooms lay dead on the Paris stones. No life in them, mourned Mountroud. Juice, sap, fire, all gone. Well now, he rubbed his chin to sparks. How do we get up to help Pipkin with no brooms? You fly, Mr. Mountroud. Oh, no, that's not the ticket. You must save him, always and forever, again and again, this night until one grand salvation. Wait. Ah! Inspiration. We were going to build Notre Dame, correct? Well, then let us by all means build it. There! And climb our way up to Hard Skull, knock the bell, sound the hour, Pipkin. Hop it, lads, climb those stairs. What stairs? These. Here, here, and here. Bricks fell in place. The boys leaped, and as they put a foot up, out, and down, a stair came under it, one stone at a time. Bong, said the bell. Help, said Pipkin. Feet galloping, empty air came down to tap, rustle, clomp on a step, another step, and yet another, and another, climbing empty space. Help, said Pipkin. Bong, again went the hollow bell. So they ran on emptiness with Mountroud prodding, shoving after. They ran on pure, windy light, only to have bricks and stones and mortar shuffle like cards, deal themselves solid, take form beneath their toes and heels. It was like racing up through a cake that built itself layer on stone layer, and the wild bell and sad Pipkin shouting and pleading them on. Our shadow! There it is, said Tom. And indeed the shadow of this cathedral, this splendid Notre Dame, was tossed by moonlight all across France and half of Europe. Up, boys! No pause, no rest, run! Bong! Help! They ran. They began to fall with each step, but again and again and again steps came in place and saved them and ran them taller, so the shadow of the spires loomed tall across rivers and fields to snuff the last witch fires at crossroads. Crones, hags, wise men, demon lovers, 1,000 miles off, snuffed like candles, whiffed to smoke, wailed and sank to hide as the church leaned, tilted across the heavens. So even as the Romans cut down druid trees and chopped their god of the dead to fall, we now with this church, boys, cast such a shadow as knocks all witches off their stilts, and puts seedy sorcerers and trite magicians to heel. No more small witch fires, only this great lit candle, Notre Dame. Presto! The boys laughed with delight, for the last step fell in place. They had reached the top, gasping. Notre Dame Cathedral was finished and built. Bong! The last half hour was struck. The great bronze bell shuddered and hung empty. The boys leaned to peer into its cavernous mouth. There was no clapper inside shaped like Pipkin. "Pipkin?" they whispered. "Pipkin, kin," echoed the bell in a small echo. "He's here somewhere. Up there in the air. Meet him what's promised." And Pipkin falls back on no promises. And said Moundshroud, "Look about, boys. Fine handiwork, eh? Centuries of toil done in a fast gallop and sneeze. But something besides Pipkin is missing. What? Glance up, scan round." The boys peered. They puzzled. Don't the place look awful plain, boys? Awful untouched and unornamented? Gargoyles! Everyone turned to look at Wally Bab, who was dressed as a gargoyle for Halloween. His face fairly beamed with revelation. "Gargoyles! The place got no gargoyles!" "Gargoyles," Moundshroud uttered and ululated, and beautifully ribboned the word with his lizardy tongue. "Gargoyles. Shall we put them on, boys?" "How?" "Why, I think we could whistle them in place. Whistle for demons, boys. Whistle for fiends. Give a high, great tootling blow for beasties and ferocious fanged loomers of the dark." Wally Bab sucked in a great breath. "Here's mine." He whistled. All whistled. And the gargoyles, they came running. The next chapter is 2 pages. We're just going to keep going. I know we're a little over. I'm going for it. Chapter 16. The unemployed of all midnight Europe shivered in their stone sleep and came awake, which is to say that all the old beasts, all the old tales, all the old nightmares, all the old unused demons put by and witches left in the lurch quaked at the call, reared at the whistle, trembled at the summons, and in dust devils of propulsion skimmed down the roads, flitted skies, buckshot through shaken trees, forded streams, swam rivers, pierced clouds, and arrived, which is still to say that all the dead statues and idols and semi-gods and demigods of Europe, lying like a dreadful snow all about, abandoned in ruins, gave a blink and start, and came as salamanders on the road, or bats in skies, or dingoes in the brush. They flew, they galloped, they skittered. To the general excitement and amazement and much babbling shout from the fringe of boys leaning out, Moundshroud leaning with them as the mobs of strange beasts came from north, south, east, west to panic at the gates and wait for whistles. "Shall we drop white-hot boiling lead down on them?" The boys saw Moundshroud smile. "Heck no," said Tom. "Hunchback already did that years ago." "Well, then, no burning lava. So shall we whistle them up?" They all whistled. And obedient to summons, the mobs, the flocks, the prides, the crush, the collection, the raving flux of monsters, beasts, vices rampant, virtues gone sour, discarded saints, misguided prides, hollow pomps oozed, slid, succored, pelted, ran bold and right up the sides of Notre Dame, in a flood tide of nightmare, in a tidal wave of outcry and shamble. They inundated the cathedral to crust themselves on every pinion and upthrust stone. So here ran pigs, and there climbed Satan's goats, and yet another wall knew devils which recarved themselves along the way, dropped horns and grew new ones, shaved beards to sprout tendril earthworm mustaches. Sometimes a swarm of only masks and faces scuttled up the walls and took the buttress heights, carried by an army of crayfish and wobbly, crotchety lobsters. Here came the heads of gorillas full of sin and teeth. There came men's heads with sausages in their mouths. Beyond danced the mask of a fool, upheld by a spider that knew ballet. So much was going on that Tom said, "My gosh, so much is going on!" "And more to come." "There," said Moundshroud. For now that Notre Dame was infested with various beasts and spidering leers and gloms and masks, why, here came dragons chasing children, and whales swallowing Jonahs, and chariots chock full of skulls and bones. Acrobats and tumblers, yanked out of shape by demi-demons, limped and fell in strange postures to freeze on the roof, all accompanied by pigs with harps, and sows with piccolos, and dogs playing bagpipes, so the music itself helped charm and pull new mobs of grotesques up the wall to be trapped and caught forever in sockets of stone. Here an ape plucked a lyre, there floundered a woman with a fish's tail. Now a sphinx flew out of the night, shed its wings, and became woman and lion, half and half, settled to snooze away the centuries in the shadow and sound of high bells. What are those?" "What are those?" cried Tom. Moundshroud, leaning over, gave a snort. "Why, those are sins, boys, and nondescripts. There crawl the worms of conscience." They looked to see it crawl. It crawled very fine. "Now," whispered Moundshroud softly, "settle, slumber, sleep." And the flocks of strange creatures turned about 3 times like evil dogs and lay down. All beasts took root. All grimaces froze to stone. All cries faded. The moon shadowed and lit the gargoyles of Notre Dame. "Does it make sense, Tom?" "Sure. All the old gods, all the old dreams, all the old nightmares, all the old ideas with nothing to do, out of work. We gave them work. We called them here. And here they will remain for centuries. Right. Right!" They looked down over the rim. There was a mob of beasts on the east battlement, a crowd of sins on the west, a surge of nightmares on the south, and a fine scuttle of unnamed vices and ill-kept virtues to the north. "I," said Tom, proud of this night's work, "wouldn't mind living here." The wind crooned in the mouths of the beasts. Their fangs hissed and whistled. "Much thanks." All right, and that concludes chapter 16. And I know that we went over this evening. I do apologize. I just really wanted to end neatly on page 100. And I had that goal in mind, so we stuck with it. I'm not going to hold you any longer. Thank you for being patient as we went over about 9 minutes now. And I hope that you have a really beautiful week. And as always, my dears, stay spooky.